what if, like, someone took your most cherished memories, those really personal moments from your past, and, like, turned them into a product?
Oh, that's an interesting question, and it's something that this speculative design project that we're going to be looking at today
Okay.
really dives into. Ephemeral Echoes is the name of the project.
Ephemeral echoes. It sounds kind of poetic, but what exactly is it?
Well, you can think of it as a visual exploration, like a map of a possible future, where nostalgia as a service, or NaaS as it's called, sort of dominates the economy.
Okay.
So instead of, traditional products, we're talking about audio memories, intricately designed and packaged to let you relive specific moments.
Okay, so it's not just like pulling out old photo albums or something. This is like way more high tech.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And that's what makes the project really interesting. It uses these really intricate details that remind you of traditional Nepali art to represent this whole market. But instead of landscapes, it's mapping out data, financial projections, and even like the points where the system might fail.
So it's like taking something that's totally intangible, like, this idea of selling memories and turning it into something that we can actually see, like almost like a warning sign or something.
Yeah, exactly. The creator of this project is this fictional AI designer named Thapa11256. And they use AI to do financial forecasting and blend that with traditional Nepali art to make us really think about what this future would be like. It's not just the technology itself, but like how society might change as a result.
Okay, now I'm really interested. So tell me about these audio memories. I mean, what are they and how do they fit into this NaaS thing?
Well, imagine, be able to revisit a moment from your past, not just seeing it, but hearing it, smelling it, even feeling the emotions again, all recreated, in perfect detail. Now, it might sound appealing at first, but the project wants us to think about this. What if we become so dependent on these like curated experiences that we lose touch with what's happening right now, with like real life and other people?
It's almost ironic, trying to connect with your past self, but actually becoming more isolated than ever.
Exactly. And then there's the question of control, like who gets to decide which memories are valuable, what gets saved and what gets lost. The project is saying that something that seems so personal is actually tied to like big systems of finance and power.
Okay, that makes sense. So let's talk about this AI designer, Thapa11256.
Yeah.
What can you tell us about their process and like why did they choose this unique approach with the art?
Well, Thapa11256 starts by like analyzing financial data, and projecting the trends in this future NaaS system. But instead of just presenting it in a boring technical way, the AI takes those predictions and turns them into these maps that are inspired by traditional Nepali art, these Thangka paintings.
Wait a minute. So we have AI financial forecasting and traditional Nepali art all together.
Yeah, it's a very unique approach, The maps use things like color gradients, contours, and these symbolic landmarks to represent market changes, risk levels, and those potential points of failure that we talked about before in this future market for nostalgia.
You said these visuals are inspired by Nepali art.
Yeah, Thangka paintings. They're known for being super detailed and symbolic, and they often show like spiritual stories and these complex cosmologies.
Oh, wow. So there's like a deeper meaning hidden in these visuals.
Absolutely. By using these artistic elements in the maps of ephemeral echoes, Thapa11256 is creating a really powerful metaphor.
Okay, I'm definitely intrigued. Break it down for me.
Okay, well, think about it this way. Thangkas are traditionally used for meditation and contemplation. They guide you through all these layers of meaning.
Yeah.
And Thapa11256 is doing something similar with these maps of the nostalgia market.
So these maps aren't just about like showing data. They're making us think about this future world and all the ethical and social implications of commodifying our memories.
Exactly. It's like each visual element, every color and symbol is a piece of a bigger philosophical puzzle that we're supposed to figure out.
Wow. So we have this future where technology can recreate the past with like amazing accuracy, but this project is asking us to consider what we might have to give up for that.
Right. And then there's the question of who benefits from this technology and what happens to those who can't afford to access their own memories. We have to be careful about assuming that technological advancement always means progress. Sometimes it just repackages old inequalities, just in a more attractive way.
This is already making me think about all the downsides we haven't even talked about yet.
Right.
This is great.
Yeah.
Okay, let's keep going.
Yeah, and that's where like the brilliance of Thapa11256's artistic choice really comes in, Like by using those Thangka-inspired visuals, it subtly highlights this paradox at the heart of NaaS.
I'm listening.
Well, Thangkas, with their intricate, depictions of deities and mandalas often represent this idea of impermanence, the cyclical nature of existence. Like Everything's always in flux, changing.
But isn't that like the opposite of what NaaS is trying to do? Like freeze those memories, make them permanent?
Exactly. It's as if Thapa 11256 is using the art itself to critique that illusion of permanence that NaaS offers. It's like a visual reminder that even our most cherished memories, even when they're digitized and perfectly preserved, are still subject to the flow of time.
Wow, that's really clever. Using art to make a point, like a hidden message, in the project itself.
Right. And it goes even deeper. Think about the cultural context here. Thapa 11256 is drawing on these ancient artistic traditions that are rooted in spirituality and a deep understanding of like what it means to be human, to challenge this future that's dominated by technology and commercialism.
So it's not just a critique of NaaS, but also a broader commentary on like the potential downsides of technological progress.
Precisely. It's a reminder that progress isn't always linear. Sometimes the very technologies that promise to connect us to our past can actually alienate us from each other and from like the present moment.
And maybe even from ourselves. I
Right.
mean, if we're constantly reliving these curated versions of our past, do we even know who we are anymore?
That's a great question, and one that the project definitely makes us think about. Like we're outsourcing our memories, handing them over to algorithms and corporations. What happens to our sense of self when our past becomes a product?
This is getting kind of deep, but I think it's important, we're talking about memories here, not just some random product. These are like the building blocks of who we are.
Absolutely. And Ephemeral Echoes doesn't shy away from those questions. In fact, it explicitly uses the visual language of cartography to highlight how unstable this whole system could be. It's not just about the beauty of the art, but also the underlying fragility of a market that's built on something as intangible and precious as our memories.
So even though NaaS seems like this futuristic high-tech concept, it's actually built on shaky ground.
That's the message I'm getting from this project. And it's not just about like technical risks like data breaches or system failures. It's about the deeper societal risks,
Yeah.
the potential for manipulation inequality, and even like the loss of our shared history.
Okay, let's break down those risks. You mentioned inequality. How could NaaS potentially make existing social divides even worse?
Well, think about it. Access to these immersive audio memories is likely going to be tied to affordability, right?
Hmm.
So those with resources, they can curate their pasts, relive their favorite moments with incredible fidelity. But what about those who can't afford that? Are they left with these faded memories like a second-class past?
It's almost like creating a digital caste system based on your ability to access your own memories.
Yeah.
And that brings up another point you mentioned, manipulation. If our memories are being digitized and commodified, who's to say they can't be altered or even erased?
It's a chilling thought, but a very real possibility. We've already seen examples of deep fakes and misinformation spreading online. Imagine that same technology being used to manipulate our personal memories, our understanding of the past. It's a slippery slope towards a future where reality itself becomes fragmented and subjective.
This is starting to sound like a dystopian sci-fi novel, but it's a future we need to be prepared for.
Yeah.
The ephemeral echoes isn't just a warning about the dangers of NaaS, it's a call to action.
I agree. It's urging us to think critically about the implications of these technologies before they completely reshape our world. And it's a reminder that we have a responsibility to make sure that access to our shared history, our collective memory, isn't controlled by corporations or algorithms.
So it's not just about protecting our individual memories, but also about safeguarding the very foundations of our culture and society.
Exactly. And that brings us back to this intriguing figure, Thapa 11256. It's interesting to think about why the project chose a fictional AI designer as its creator.
It almost feels like a commentary on the evolving relationship between humans and technology, like the AI is challenging us to confront the potential consequences of our own creations.
That's a great observation. And it's a powerful reminder that the future isn't predetermined. It's shaped by the choices we make today, the technologies we develop, and the values we prioritize.
So even though this project is exploring a potential future, it's actually about the choices we're making right now.
Absolutely. And it's a powerful reminder that we have the agency to shape that future, to decide what role technology plays in our lives and how we want to engage with our memories.
Well, this conversation has definitely given me a lot to think about.
Huh.
You mentioned earlier that Thapa 11256 isn't a real person, but a creation of AI.
That's right. Thapa 11256 is a product of what's called generative AI. It's a type of artificial intelligence that can create original content, whether it's music, art, or even, in this case, a fictional designer with a backstory and artistic influences.
So in a way, Thapa 11256 is like a meta-commentary on the very themes the project explores.
Exactly. You have an AI, a product of advanced technology, creating art that warns us about the potential dangers of that very technology. It's like a self-aware algorithm, urging us to be careful.
It's almost poetic, isn't it? The creation questioning the creator.
It definitely adds another layer of complexity to the project. It makes you wonder about the evolving relationship between humans and AI and the potential for AI to not only mimic human creativity, but also to engage in critical reflection.
It also makes me think about like the nature of authorship and originality in the age of AI. If an AI can create art that's indistinguishable from human-made art, what does that mean for our understanding of those concepts?
Those are questions that philosophers and art critics are grappling with right now, and Ephemeral Echoes really brings those questions to the forefront.
It's interesting that even though Kappa 11256 is fictional, the project still feels really personal.
I agree. And I think that speaks to the power of art to connect with us on an emotional level, regardless of where it comes from, whether it's created by a human or an AI. Great art has the ability to make us feel, think, and question.
And in this case, Ephemeral Echoes is definitely making us question
But
our relationship with technology, our memories, and even our own humanity.
it's a powerful reminder that as we go deeper into the digital world, we need to be careful about what we might be leaving behind, or even worse, surrendering to algorithms and corporations.
It's a call to action, urging us to be active participants in shaping the future, rather than just passive consumers of prepackaged experiences, even if those experiences are our own memories.
Well said. Ephemeral Echoes is a wake-up call disguised as art, and it's a message we should all pay attention to.
It's interesting how this project, Ephemeral Echoes, brings together art and technology to explore something so human, memory.
Yeah.
We've talked about the risks of this whole NaaS thing, but what about the good stuff? Could this technology be used for something positive?
Yeah, that's a really important point, and one that the project does touch on. Imagine using NaaS to help people with dementia or Alzheimer's, allowing them to relive happy memories and connect with loved ones. Or think about the potential for education, like students could immerse themselves in historical events or different cultures through these personalized audio memories.
So it's not the technology itself that's good or bad, it's how we use it.
Exactly. Like any powerful tool, NaaS has the potential for both, good and bad ephemeral echoes. By focusing on the risks, is kind of urging us to have these ethical conversations now before the technology becomes so widespread that we lose sight of what it really means.
It's like a reminder that technological progress shouldn't come at the cost of our humanity, our history, or the realness of our experience.
Precisely. And that's why I think the project's use of those Thonka-inspired visuals is so important. It's like a subtle nod to the importance of tradition, spirituality, and a deeper understanding of ourselves in the face of all this rapid technological change.
It's almost as if Thappa 11256, this AI designer, is reminding us that technology should be a tool to make our lives better, not to control them.
Right. And it reinforces the idea that the future isn't something that just happens to us. It's something we create through the choices we make, both individually and as a society.
So what does all this mean for us, for those of us trying to navigate this world of technology and memory that's constantly changing?
Well, I think Ephemeral Echoes gives us a really valuable way to think about the future. It encourages us to be critical of technology, to question the assumptions behind all these new gadgets and services, and to think about the long-term consequences before we jump in head first.
It's a call to be more aware, not just of our own memories, but of how technology can shape how we see the past, present, and future.
And it reminds us that even in a world that's becoming more and more digital, those human qualities like empathy, creativity, and critical thinking are still super important.
This has been a really thought-provoking deep dive into Ephemeral Echoes. We've explored the potential risks and benefits of NaaS, the clever way the project uses art to critique technology, and the complex connection between memory and identity in a digital age. Thank you for joining us on Exploring Futures. We hope this conversation has made you curious about the future, and we encourage you to share this deep dive with others who might be interested in exploring these ideas further.